What's something from the 90s you miss? Being able to act goofy without having anyone record it and share with the world. Arcades. Big, noisy arcades, full of actual video games, whose graphics were 20 times better than what you could get at home. The excitement of watching a TV show with your friends at a certain time, and if you missed it, you missed it. Saturday morning TV. I miss the lack of interconnectivity. My summer camp friends were different from school friends, and I didn't really see my summer camp friends outside of July and August. Everything was distinct. When I went from western New York to New Jersey to see family, it was basically like being on another planet. I think I like everything being more connected, but that sense of distinctness is something I miss. Actual 90s aesthetic. It was extreme and alternative, not family-friendly, wacky or dystopian like a lot of people think when they see an 80s aesthetic. Example. The entire aesthetic of Nickelodeon in the 90s. Slime and extreme shit. Sometimes I miss the internet from the 90s. It was less stressful, if that makes sense. Being considered smart, not weird, for refusing to make your IRL identity known online. Colorful translucent electronics. Video games that aren't online and not having to sign into 3 accounts to play any game. I have my computer set to manually connect to the internet. I still have to sign into Steam to play a game that isn't dependent in an active connection. Thankfully there is an offline mode for Steam, but I shouldn't have to sign in the first place if the game doesn't require a password. Walking 20 minutes to a mate's house, knocking his door, then finding out he's not in. It was like rolling the dice. Movies. A lot my favorite movies are mid-sized thrillers from the 90s. A lot of big actors, but not huge spectacles. That segment is dying out. You have huge blockbusters for international markets, some prestige period pieces, comedies and indies. And then there are TV shows. But the sort of Harrison Ford's wife is missing. Argand films are severely lacking these days. My youth. Being social with people felt so different and authentic. My friends would sometimes just drop by to see if I was home to say hi. We could pick up the phone and have hour-long conversations. It felt like text message cheapened that. The lesser dependence on technology seemed to cultivate more genuine friendships, but that was just my experience. I miss the internet being fun and optimistic. I genuinely feel like the internet has gone from the most important and greatest achievement of humanity to something that might have been a mistake during my lifetime. It's really sad because a global communications network should be a great thing for everyone. No social media. Not always being available. Friends just randomly stopping by your house. Much less political divisiveness. I miss not being able to be reached, or being able to reach people. Back then you'd call your friend and it would ring somewhere in their house. If there was no one there, which was common, you'd shrug and just carry on your day. If you just wanted to chill out on your own, you'd just not answer the phone. Now, everyone knows people are never without their phones. I've had people pissed at me because I took an hour to reply to a text. The original release of Pokémon cards. Those were the fucking best. My niece is big into Pokémon now, and she just got a shitload of cards for her birthday. Made me want to start collecting them again, but I look up the packs from my youth and their astronomical prices. Ah well. Affordable housing and the non-existence of social media. Optimism about the world. Pre-9/11 there wasn't a huge culture of fear in America, and it actually seemed like we could tackle some of humanity's challenges. Now we are fighting over whether science is true and how much we should be allowed to torture and kill brown people. People who have heard deathbed confessions. What were some interesting ones? When I was in hospital, the guy in the bed next to me just asked to stop taking his meds as he was ready to die. Last thing I heard him say was, "There's no one waiting for me at home, so I'm going where they are." Wasn't really a shocking confession, just a lonely and heartbreaking one. My grandfather had pretty terrible dementia and he kept making deathbed confessions as he knew he didn't have much time left. They were often about witnessing a murder and not telling anyone, but each time he confessed to us the details changed. It happened a couple of times a day over the course of his final week. We finally figured out that he would watch the local news and hear about these things happening, then would think he had actually witnessed them. I didn't see it, but my aunt watched her elderly mother fall down the stairs and confess just before she died that she wasn't her biological mother. She told my aunt that her oldest sister was actually her mother. The sister had gotten pregnant too young and the mom said it was hers. A common way of handling it back then. She revealed it in her very last breath. Not a deathbed confession, but the last conversation I had with my grandfather has always stuck with me. He had Parkinson's and lived on a farm outside of town. One day he looked at me and said, "I'm getting too old to take care of Mom, my grandmother. I need you to do that for me, okay?" His health deteriorated pretty rapidly from that point onward. I still call my grandmother every single day, and try to get back home whenever I can to help out around the farm. Not really a confession, but my cousin and I got into a car accident and he died. His friends got him to steal and vandalize so many things. They also put him in jail 4 different times. When we were in the hospital and he was about to die, his last words were, "Welp, if I go to hell, at least I'll be with all my friends. I love you." This wasn't a deathbed confession, but more of hospice. This man was an alcoholic. This isn't usually a problem because when in hospice you can get whatever you want as long as it is legal, but he was a violent drunk and was forbidden alcohol as a result. Anyways, between his requests for alcohol, he talked about how he and a friend got into a massive fight about land and his equipment being borrowed. As a result, they haven't spoken in 20 years. He said he didn't even know why it was such a big deal and regretted being that aggressive. Basically said he missed his best friend and wished they didn't lose all those years. Mother ran a nursing home growing up. From ages 5–10 I spent every weekend with residents. Because I was a kid, residents often confessed stuff they thought I wouldn't understand. 2 stick out. One funny, one not. Women was dying, maybe about 96. Even had her last burst of energy, life where she thought she was better. This is common. A black delivery man came with some flowers. After he left, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I can't believe I'm dying without having been with a colored man." Second one was while I was reading Bible verses to a resident. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to drop that baby in the well. My grandmother fell sick and it got worse in 2 weeks. A few minutes before dying she said, 'Shift me on the another bed and remove all these stuffs and open the doors. I'm leaving now.'" Germany, post-WW2. Ruth is a young German, Felician, a French solitaire, falls head over heels, brought many thoughtful gifts, such as a big juicy ham for her family. They marry. His family and friends are in the south of France, but they stay in Germany. He now goes by the name Felix. They stay together, through several miscarriages, infertility. They never have children. Ruth dies first, around 2010. On her deathbed she tells him, "You know Felix the First always liked you, but I never loved you. Weich Felix, I han die immer gern gehabt, aber geliebt han I die nie." One neighbor who died 6 years ago told his wife what dishes she should prepare at the 40 days ceremony we do in our country. He told her to prepare X dish for the 2nd of September. He told her that a couple weeks before his death. He died on the 22nd of July. Turns out he was right. If you count 40 days to the 22nd of July, you get the 2nd of September. There was no way he could know when he would die, since it wasn't some life expectancy gave by some doctor. He was just sick, and due to his fever he got the date right. Not quite a deathbed confession, as my family didn't want me to see my grandma there, as they were worried my memory of her being a happy and cheerful woman would be marred, and they were probably right. So I got to send her a letter which they read aloud to her. They told me that some of her last words were my name, and she passed just a few minutes after it was read to her. She managed to think of me in her last moments, despite being drugged heavily enough to knock out an elephant, and I'll always remember that about her. Not a confession, but still something that sticks out to me. My great-grandma was in the hospital going in and out of consciousness. While falling out of consciousness one time she whispered, "Mama." And then she said, "It's beautiful. It still gives me goosebumps thinking about it. Not matter if you believe in heaven, afterlife or not, I think it's really comforting." My granduncle admitted to killing POWs during the war. He was a lance corporal in the 43rd Wessex, 30th Corps. Wouldn't say how many he killed, but said that he and his mates would deliberately force the German POWs to run and then shoot them in the back to prevent escape. He said he stopped after his CO discovered what was going on and gave him a stern warning. "Wish I spent more time with my family before they all committed suicide. Pensive face, pensive face, pensive face." The last 2 things my grandfather told me was that when he was a kid he and his mother would throw big stones on cars from a bridge, and he also told me about how much better looking the lady that delivered bread to his family was compared to my grandma. I didn't witness this personally, as it was between my grandfather and his father. My great-grandfather was not a nice man. He beat his children. One time he beat his daughter with a table leg, and I am assuming did the same to his wife. Anyway, she left him and the kids behind. This was the 30s and I am assuming that he didn't allow her to take the kids with her, and it's not like women's rights were great back then. My grandfather left home at 8 years old and fended for himself for his entire life. On his deathbed, nasty grandpa told the boys that he had a bunch of money stashed on the old property, and if they went to see him, he would tell them where it was. No one went. My grandpa said he worked as a consultant for movies under the government. He was reported to push technology like anti-gravity and lights connected to consciousness, flashy thingy from MIB. He said that this was priming people for alien technology so that they would feel like we had that tech and people wouldn't freak out. My family definitely freaked out, to say the least. I worked at a nursing home. It's amazing how many of the nurses and PSWs who spent last moments with a patient would report their last words were, "I make you my sole beneficiary." I was told about the layers of ego dissolving into oblivion. Who you once thought you are is gone, and now who you really are is exposed. Told me death is an easy feat to conquer, laid back, looked me in the eyes and whispered, "Wow," then died. A 92-year-old man confessed that he had an affair lasting 13 years.